Yes, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back on this beautiful Monday night, the 19th of January 2026. Thank you so much for those of you that have been following the conversation since our return from an internet black shutdown here in Kampala, Uganda. Um, Thank you for those of you that have been part of those conversations. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be back to once again continue with that conversation. And today we'll be talking a little bit of transfers. We'll talk a little bit of, more of the reaction from the Africa Cup of Nations. We have the UEFA Champions League to look forward to that does return this week for match day 7. And as we speak, Bournemouth are leading by goal to nil against Brighton and Hove Albion. Thanks to that goal scored by Marc, I think around the 32nd minute. It was a penalty that I think needed via intervention. So yeah, I will be reacting to all that and what we'll be giving our thoughts on in regards to what we expect will be coming. A lot has been said in the wake of the Africa Cup of Nations conclusion. From what we observed on Sunday, from that was in the final that was played in Morocco as Senegal won their second title of the Africa Cup of Nations, beating the finalists Morocco there by a goal to nil. And we're going to try and digest everything from that regard or from that front. But I must say, our friends from the northern part of Africa have branded themselves over the years as some really, really bad losers of the game. Because I say that because of what transpired during the course of the game, in the aftermath of the game. Some people have had very, very unkind comments for Brahim Diaz for the missed penalty. And I was reading some reaction from PSG manager Luis Enrique, and he was saying that you see about the Penanka, making reference to a great Zinedine Zidane who did it at the World Cup, and he says, if it goes in, everybody praises it as smart. If it doesn't go in, then suddenly we want to lambaste the player, and things like that. So it's understandable because we as football fans are synonymous with that. Usually when A is done and it doesn't work out, we always wonder why it wasn't B. And if B is done and it doesn't work out, then we ask why wasn't it A or C. So we are never content with what happens. People that look at the game with a sudden lack of objectivity never appreciate it in the sense of for what it is and for the difficulties that it may come with, which are quite plenty, by the way, must I acknowledge. So it's all there for the world to see. And we digested our thoughts in regards to the penalty incident, whether we floated our thoughts of whether, there was consensus that Brahim Diaz misses it. The world has also had its say about it. A lot of people do not agree that school of thought stands. They do not, and they can't comprehend why at that bit of stage you'd, give it away that way. But also, they made the similar arguments like we made last night in regards to the pressure that comes with taking a penalty. And I made reference to Yohan Mata for his interview when he talked about how difficult it can be to take a penalty, and given the distance that one may have to walk. But in this particular case, you had the game stop for, I think, about more than 10 minutes, just waiting in between the protests of the Senegalese. Pape Theo, who has been suspended, by the way, by I think CAF, has been suspended, and rightly so, for putting the game in disrepute, calling his players off the pitch. The rules, as I've come to learn, say that if you do walk off the pitch without permission from the match official, then you stand to be knocked out of that tournament at whatever stage it is, and you lose that particular game. So, and in the work under that same principle or rule, the Royal Moroccan Federation wants, I think, to go to court to take CAF and FIFA to court because they think that Senegal should be losing the game by forfeiture. And why? Because they violated the rules by walking away or walking off, even when they didn't, when they thought they disagreed with the decision of, the match referee. And this speaks exactly to what I was saying yesterday. For those of you that were following our conversation, that whether you agree or disagree with the decision that has been made by the referee, walking off that pitch was not the solution, and the decision that causes them to walk off is one that was the right decision. It's not the injustice one or the unjust decision that caused them to walk off. Unfortunately. So, and you know how one moment can define you or can cause people to pass harsh judgment on you. For example, there's this cliche that you'll do 10 good things and do one bad thing, and to an individual, to a friend or a colleague, and all they will remember is that one bad thing and forget all the other 10 good things. So, in a way, the match referee, yesterday's match referee, found himself in that sort of framework, where you had you had him in bad taste for one bad decision, because it's the foul on or even by Achraf Hakimi during a Senegalese corner, for which he blows the whistle in favor of Achraf Hakimi to give a foul, that most people are enraged or are judging him by. Now, like I said, if that decision is made in the middle of the park, we will all have a debate of it as a soft foul, or we'll say it wasn't the right decision, as simple as that. But because the referee blows the whistle for that foul, and in a quick snapshot of events, Senegal score a goal before the ball is halted, then our enragement about the moment is amplified. And then suddenly, for all the entirety of the 90 minutes, in my opinion, how the referee had properly handled the game, all that seemed to have been ruined or brought into question by that one moment. And like I said, a lot of people cannot disabuse themselves of other biases that they may have had about the sport or the officiating of the game itself, to realize or to make the argument or to be honest to themselves to say that penalty awarded to Morocco was the correct decision. And like I said, prior to those two decisions, I had not found the referee wanting in his judgment. It's not to say that he was perfect or that he did not get any other decisions wrong during the course of the game, but I for one, cannot significantly remember a moment that I can fault him for. Some people, there's somebody that made some comments, and I don't know if they watched the game or they just reacted to it, talking about African football going to the ruins. But that's not the point. They said Senegal had their goal cancelled and not even reviewed by the video assistant referee. Now, if you watch the game, then you would know that VAR could not intervene for the simple reality or reason that the referee blew his whistle before the ball goes into the back of the net. So that means the referee's call takes precedent or takes first yard. And as unfortunate, like I said, whether you agree that it was a genuine foul or not, that's all besides the point. But you cannot fault VR for not intervening for a call that the referee had already made. If the referee had let the moment play itself out, and then they score a goal, and then after the goal is being scored, he then judges Akraf Hakimi to have been fouled, to then for which as the result the goal would have been cancelled, then we'll be having a very totally different debate, and perhaps we'll be having a different conversation altogether. But that wasn't the case. So a lot of people who have had their go at the referee, meanwhile, the game between Brighton and Bournemouth is at halftime, with Bournemouth still leading by a goal to nil. It's at the Amex Stadium between, of course, Fabian Hatzler against the Spaniard Andoni Iraola. So a lot of people that are criticizing the referee are looking at the two incidents with an intellectual dishonesty or omission of certain truths within the respective moments. So, but for me, like I told you, for me, the penalty to Morocco, that's the correct decision. The goal, there was no goal cancelled whatsoever, because the goal cannot stand because the ball hits the back of the net when the referee has already blown his whistle. And so we cannot fault VAR for not intervening in that particular moment. And then for the referee to award that foul against Akraf Hakimi, I thought it was a soft decision to give away. I thought it shouldn't have been a foul in the first place. In any case, Akraf Hakimi was equally culprit in pulling the opponent or pushing the opponent, and that pushing, pulling, and shoving kind of thing that usually goes on. So, as unfortunate as you may think of it, if it does not happen in the moment within which Senegal subsequently score a goal, even after the whistle has gone, would simply, and it's not in the box, would be simply saying, one referee did not get a good look at that one, he just made the wrong call. Like I said, it happens to even the assistant referees. A ball is deflected, let's say, since we are speaking about AFCON, let's say ball is deflected out by a Senegalese player, and then the throw in is given to Senegal, or vice versa. If it's that kind of, we have those kinds of decisions, a ball goes out and it should be a corner kick, but then the referee calls it to be a goal kick. Why? Because the assistant has not helped him to decide otherwise, or because he thinks that's what he's seen. So we get match officials making some of those, or getting some of those decisions wrong. So in my perspective, or in my humble opinion, is that the referee in that particular moment got the decision wrong. And because you had all these incidents in which Morocco appeared to have been favored at different stages of the competition, particularly at the round of 16 and at the quarterfinals, we came with that sort of prejudice that the odds are being tipped in the favor of the Moroccans. Now, there's also the argument about the semi-final game between Egypt and Nigeria. Sorry. Just a second. Just a second. There's also that argument of between, yes, the referee that handled I think there was the semi-final between Nigeria and Morocco, and then Senegal, Egypt. Now, I, for one, did not get to watch the semi-final games for reasons that I told you guys. So I'm not well positioned to make any comments to the facts or particulars of those respective games because I've not even had the chance to watch the replays. So I'll let it play out and not comment on those. So that's why I keep making reference to the quarterfinal and the round of 16 in inference of Morocco, where they got in certain decisions away with. So for me, it's basically that. It's I can't say it's that simple. I cannot say that. But Senegal did not paint African football in the right image. A lot of people have said that their action of walking off the pitch saved the game from its ruins. But I say their act of walking off the pitch put the game in disrepute. In the end, it worked out for them. How? Because once the penalties are awarded and Papa Theo calls his players to march off, and many of them walked to the tunnel and went to the dressing room, and it took it took the intervention of other actors to eventually convince players like Sadio Mane to go and call back his teammates to get back on the pitch and play. That put the game in disrepute. How did it work in Senegal's favor? Is that in those about 10 minutes of chaos, of contest, of protest, of expressing their frustrations or anger over what they deemed an injustice on the game, killed whatever momentum the Moroccans may have had. When we get to the penalty itself, first of all, those Moroccans know they have a penalty. Two, they don't know how the situation is going to play out, whether those Senegalese players are going to return back to the pitch. Three, but a part of them must be believing that at one point they're going to return back to the pitch. And what happened, or what happens, is that as they believe that eventually those players were going to get back on the pitch, they've already decided who is going to take their penalty. And that was the best player for me of the tournament, in Brahim Diaz, also the top scorer. And as he waits to take that penalty, a lot goes through his mind. Jody, is it Jody Maguire? Remember me, says, remember me, not particularly Jody. Kindly remind me, where are you joining us from? It's 1 minute past the hour of midnight here in Kampala, Uganda. So Jody, kindly remind me, where are you from? Where are you joining us from? So all players that have played the game before and have had the opportunities to take penalties forget in any regular game or ordinary game, a penalty of high stakes, particularly at a knockout stage of a competition, they'll tell you that a lot goes through your mind because you feel that your team depends on it for the survival to either stay or be bow out of the competition. We've seen great players miss penalties. And for me, the penalty miss, I really, really do not want to blame it on Brahim Diaz and make it such a big deal. It was a big moment, and he never lived to the big moment. The Penanka, I thought, for one, he shouldn't have taken it with the Penanka. But like I said, it's easy for me to say that he shouldn't have done that because it did not go in. If he did it and it went in, I'll be singing praise of him. That I'll be speaking praise of his talent and his, brilliancy to have the confidence to take it that way if it had gone in. So that's why I don't want to be too hard on him. Two, we've seen players like Mohamed Salah miss penalties at this tournament. We've seen big players during big moments miss penalties. We've seen the Cristiano Ronaldos, the Lionel Messis of this world miss penalties. Now, because the stakes were that high for Morocco, who have only won the competition once, and that was 50 years ago because they won it in 1976, a lot of people think it was their make or break moment. Let's not forget they were at home, so it had a lot going for it. But the difficulty of the moment is that, like I told you, Senegal's protest worked to their advantage. Why? Because by the time they return, Brahim Diaz, who has been assigned with the task of taking that penalty, is had a whole lot going, for him. First of all, he's cooled down. Two, that momentum that you have of the game is gone after that, 10 minutes or so break. Three, you have a lot going on in your head. Where should I place this penalty? Do I go left? Do I go right? Eduardo Mendy is a very big, tall keeper. So if I go left, he could get it. If I go right, he could get to it. Do I go to the roof? If I go for the roof, I may put it over the bar, or it may hit the crossbar. So what do? Do I put it down the middle, hoping that he dives the other way, or whichever direction he may dive, the ball stays in the middle? Well, all that went through his mind until that moment when he gets the ball and puts it down. And until he hits that ball, or he takes the final steps to hit that ball, I'm not sure he had actually made up his mind on what he was going to do. So as he takes those final steps towards the ball, that's when he decides, I'll go for a penanka right down the middle. And unfortunately for him, Eduardo Mendy is quite an experienced goalkeeper who has been through all those kinds of moments. And there's been a number of penankas attempted at him. The one I remember particularly was that one against Aguero. And again, he stayed put and he saved it. So he stayed put and he saved this one as well. Like I said, if the ball hits the back of the net, we'll all be singing praise of him. Because it doesn't, we want to crucify him. I won't crucify him, I did yesterday and today morning, I did question his thought process. Because you see, the thing with the penanka is that it does not have pace and power to it. That even if a goalkeeper gets maybe a slight touch to it, it may still find its way into the back of the net. It's just a smart penalty, a cheeky penalty, that if the goalkeeper does dive the wrong way, it's going to hit the back of the net. I remember, I think it was Andrea Pirlo who scored it against Joe Hart. Probably at the Euros. And then, like I said, Zinedine Zidane is one of the other players that have scored a penalty. Lots of other players have done it. And like I said, if it goes in, you're brilliant. If it doesn't, you're a bad decision maker. So, but also the other thing that I always note is that in every penalty miss, we are quick to castigate the player that misses the penalty and forget the brilliance of the goalkeeper if the goalkeeper has saved that penalty. Forget the ones that go wide, like Noni Madueke against Portsmouth, the ones that hit the crossbar, like Dominic Soboslai against Burnley. Forget those ones. Once the player hits the ball on target and the goalkeeper saves it, oftentimes our judgment of the moment is that the player took a weak penalty or a poor penalty and forget the brilliance of the goalkeeper. So that's it. Now, in the grand scheme of the tournament, forgetting the final because Senegal champions and all, even though, like I've told you, Morocco apparently want to go to court and contest that perhaps Senegal should be losing the game in a boardroom decision for flouting the rules. So it's not. We'll have to wait and see. But I do not think anyway. They do have grounds for standing, or they have a leg to stand on in making that move. Whether they will win that case is a whole different story, So, what was I saying? Sorry, I lost you guys for a second there. So, anyway, the reason as to why they have ground to stand on is because of Senegal's behavior. Papa Theo apologized for that, but he knows. He knows that he put the game in disrepute for his commanding of the players to walk off. He knows that even when you disagree with the referee, you ought to stay on and play because there was no pitch invasion. Now, to sum up the entire tournament, I thought it was a good tournament. I thought it was an entertaining tournament. Kudos to all the fans that made it to inside the stadiums to watch those games. Kudos to Morocco for the brilliant organization in terms of hosting the competition, the beautiful infrastructure. Morocco got a lot of exposure from it. People got to see the beauty of their infrastructure, and the train stations, the railways, the airports, the bus, the public transport means and etc. All that, brilliant. Now, it was not all perfect because I remember, I think it was Senegal ahead of the semi. Was it Senegal that claimed they had not been provided sufficient security and things like that? Now, of course, Morocco themselves as a team did some dark arts on their opponents, trying to disenfranchise them to get an advantage going into the game. Two, there was a lot of indiscipline off the pitch by the Moroccans. Now, CAF and FIFA, but particularly CAF, or Confederation of African Football Associations, are reviewing or using an independent body or part of their departments to review incidents of fans fighting. It's not to exonerate Senegalese fans or Moroccan fans, but somebody has to be penalized for that. But the incidents that I want to take note of are those that happened not in the stands and not on the pitch, or the playing turf, but outside the pitch. There's a Senegalese goalkeeper, Yovan Diouf, who took the responsibility on him to stand guard over Eduardo Mendy's towels. Son of Soweto was making these arguments, and it was not to disqualify them, but I was telling him those incidents had no impact on what was happening on the pitch. So I was trying to exonerate the referee or the officiation of the game as a whole. But first of all, it was raining, at least for a good part of the game. A towel is needed. It's not a must that you should have it, but goalkeepers often have these towels to, maybe dry up their gloves, clean up their faces, whatever. They have their reasons. Here, we know that sometimes towels are placed around, the pitch for players to clean the ball or wipe the ball before they take a throw in. That's if teams reach a consensus. Oftentimes, when those towels are not there, because according to the rules, for example, the Premier League, both teams must agree on using the towels. Oftentimes, you'll see players put the ball under their shirt to try and wipe it a bit. Now, as he stood guard of that, there's a Moroccan player that tried to intervene and pull the towel off of him. Now, that's an unsporting character. The ball boys intervened, trying to literally fight Diouf, or they actually fought Diouf over that towel. A steward or a gentleman that appeared to be a steward also intervened. At one point, they are fighting for that towel, and Diouf steps onto the turf, the playing turf, the actual playing turf, the triangle. Sorry, not the triangle, the rectangle. Now, as Eduardo Mendy sort of draws backwards to anticipate an oncoming ball, a coming ball, that's when the Moroccan player eases up on him, that he steps off the playing turf, and they continue to have a go at it. Now, my views in the morning about those incidents were in comparison, or were to defend the referee, that he had not been brought alight to those moments. Not the fourth official, no linesman, nobody alerted the referee that, hey, there are some shenanigans going on back here. So I exonerated the referee for having not intervened in those parts, because as far as he's concerned, his responsibility is his first responsibility or primary role is what happens on the playing turf, in that rectangle, not off of it. Because his attention is not out there, but inside there. Unless he's alerted to what is happening outside there, he cannot bring a game to a halt to resolve a situation on the other part. So for me, that was my point of argument, to exonerate the referee. But those moments themselves looked ugly. The stewards, the ball boys, and the Moroccan players did not need to do that. The first incident that I saw happened with Achraf Hakimi. He sees Edouard Mendy's towel, he picks it up, it's off the playing turf or outside the pitch, and he throws it over the advertising boards. And quickly, Diouf runs and picks it up. Now, when he picks it up, he literally gets swamped by, some ball boys, I think, and players. Now, those were ugly scenes. We do not want to see that in football, And if any of those Moroccan players, first of all, the ball boys, how dare you even touch a player? You have no right, absolutely no right, to be touching a player. Then, the fellow opponents, the Moroccan players, if you do not agree with what you think the opponent is doing, bring that to the attention of the linesman or the fourth official on the touchline to say, that guy is standing over there. I think he may, have a negative impact on the game, or whichever argument you may want to make or report, but bring it to the awareness of the officials. Do not take matters into your own hands. It's not your role. Because this was not two rivals having a go at it that it was that contentious. It's people picking bonds where they shouldn't be picking them. But like I told you, our North African friends are such bad losers. First of all, they have this superiority complex that they want to claim on African football, which, if we are being honest, other than Egypt, none of them has it. Other than Egypt, the most successful country in African football, as far as the AFCON is concerned, the rest do not have it. Not Morocco, not Tunisia, not Algeria, not Libya, not Algeria, none. They don't have it. Not Sudan. So if we're to draw comparisons, and I've said this before, in the grand scheme of things, West African teams are the most successful teams in African football. For example, Cameroon has 5 AFCON titles, Ghana has 4, Nigeria has 3, Ivory Coast has 3, Senegal now has 2, DRC Congo has 2, South Africa has 1, Zambia has 1, which other West African country has won it before? I don't remember. I stand to be corrected, but I'm trying to sort of look through my head to find which other African country has won it before. Sorry, West African country, But when you look at the North Africans, besides Egypt, who have 7, it's only Algeria that have won it twice, in 1990 and 2019. All the others have won it once. Tunisia, 2004, when they hosted the tournament. Morocco, 1976. Libya have never won it. They only reached the finals in 1982. So they have no big claim on African football in terms of overall dominance. Now, when it comes to African club football, they're very, very dominant there. That I'll give it to them. But even when they host fellow teams or teams during the CAF Champions League, CAF Confederations Cup, they have that bullish element to them. But it comes from that mentality of feeling that they are more superior than others. And it's okay to feel that you're better than others. And it's okay to do certain things to get advantage in a game, but have a sportsmanship to you as well. You must have a code, So some of the things that we did witness in the final were not good. But like I said, for me, they happened off the playing rectangle, that they had no direct impact on the game. So it is what it is. But for me, that's the summary of it. Some really, really disappointing teams. Gabon were disappointing in their performances. Uganda Cranes were very disappointing in their performances at the AFCON. Botswana, of course, Equatorial Guinea, and Gabon, I think, were the only 3 teams that left the competition without a single point. But overall, I thought it was a good tournament. We enjoyed it. I, for one, did not enjoy it as much as I did the previous edition, but it was a very good tournament, I must acknowledge. Now, the baton or the mantle or the flag was handed over to the 3 East African nations of Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania. In 1996, Kenya had won the rights to host the Africa Cup of Nations. But because they failed to meet the infrastructure requirements, the tournament ended up being handed over to South Africa, who turned out to be the eventual winners. In 2017, a combination of infrastructure and I think Ebola that had raged in West Africa caused CAF to withdraw hosting rights from Cameroon to Egypt. And then Cameroon hosted the hosted the 2021 edition after Cameroon failed to host the 2019 edition. So really, the three East African nations have it all to do. Rwanda, I'm led to believe that had put in a bid to host the 2029 edition, or alternatively, the 2035 edition. They have 3 world-class stadiums, Amahoro being at the tip of that. I think the other is called Nyawat. I forget the others. But Rwanda have been intentional on sports investment because they want to attract sports tourism. So they are not part of the Pamoja bid. Unfortunately for Rwanda, they'll have to make fresh bids because, as we know, the format has been changed. But that's all besides the point. Back to the 3 East African countries of Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania, they have a lot to do when it comes to their infrastructure development. And this goes beyond just the stadium. It speaks to the road network. It speaks to hospitality facilities. Now, most major towns in Uganda that you go to have some really good hospitality facilities. By that I mean hotels, motels, guest houses, and things like that. However, there are not that many in those regions because of the overall economic standards. 2, having seen what a highway looks like in Morocco, not that I'd never seen any before, I'd seen a lot of those in Europe, from movies, from documentaries, and everything, and all the content we consume on a daily basis. But having seen the nature of highways in Morocco, in Uganda, I think we only have 2 of that nature. And I'm not saying we have 2 because they are similar, but in the resemblance of what should be called a highway. Now, 1, we have the Northern Bypass, which is only a couple of kilometers, by the way. We have the Entebbe Express Highway. Now, that one will pass for fully standard professional highway. Now, when you go to Eastern Uganda, somewhere in Jinja, I think as you head out to Iganga or something, that's where you have a semblance of another highway. A road, dual carriage, on one side, well separated in the middle, and things like that. But based on the standards that we saw in Morocco, I would say Morocco put the bar here. And East African countries are still here. So they need to step up. I do not expect them to step up to be here, to be on the same level with Morocco, or even be better than them in a snapshot of time, because it's 1 year left to the AFCON 2017. But I expect them to improve in comparison. From a scale, if Morocco is a 10 out of 10, I'll put East African countries at about a 3 out of 10. Now, I make that argument solely based on what I know for a fact is the case in Uganda, but also what I've seen in Kenya. Now, Kenya have some really good infrastructure, even their road network and all that. And Tanzania are doing fairly well. But those highways, they're single carriage. Most of them are single carriage. That's the only speed. So we need to move from a 3 out of 10 to at least a 5, 6 out of 10. So that means we won't get to the 10 out of 10 that Morocco may be having or showcased or using them as the example or what they may have in South Africa or in Egypt, but we must make those strides in a space of a year. Can it be done? Very possible. Where there is will, there is always a way. In Uganda, we borrow money, or government borrows money for all nonsensical reasons. It would be nice for government to do it for the right reasons and actually put the money to use. We live in a country where government borrows money and it spends 5 years, more than 5 years in its coffers just because the purpose for which they borrowed it for, all conditions have not been met for that project to be done. I don't know how many years we spent crying over the Mpigi Busega Expressway. It got off the ground and did not move an inch. So much so that the zones that had been worked on felt like not even paper towns, but abandoned projects. And that's what they were. They were abandoned. Until recently, late last year, that they woke up and borrowed more money, which puts our project expenditure exponentially high. The cost of doing a kilometer of road in Uganda is sometimes 10 times the cost of doing a kilometer of road in any other country on the planet. It's a case of corruption. That's just the nature of our politics and governance mechanisms or bureaucracies and all that. But for me, I want to see, first of all, I do not want us to get to a point where CAF feel the need to withdraw those rights of hosting the tournament to take it elsewhere, because I know what the advantages can be in hosting that kind of tournament. Two, so I want to see our countries make strides and forget this one also what feels like miraculous projects, because the West Suma 100 that Hoima City Stadium, that's close to miraculous. They handled the project really, really well and fast enough. So when it comes to the road infrastructure, we have so many broken highways that need to be worked on. I know Fort Potro, Chegegwa, Kampala is being worked on. There's that road to, is it to Hoima or Mitiana Road? Needs rehabilitation. Construction on the Masaka Kampala Mbara Highway seems to go on forever. That's a road that needs to be redone all the way to Mbara and beyond. We've seen, due to geographical reasons or disasters, roads that are broken away. Others have come of age, but not come of age enough, but because of some substandard work that their lifespan is usually short. Because you don't tell me you spent billions to do a road that will only last 10 years. It should be a minimum of 20 years. You know, that's how it should be making economic sense to you. That in a space of 20 years, should have recouped the investment that I put in this road in terms of taxes and everything, or improving economic value within the communities that these roads ply. So, anyways, that's all the politics of AFCON. And yeah, we'll have to wait and see whether Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya will be up to the test. Kenya have plans of building another international airport. They have, I think, some really good airports. Uganda is making strides in the same direction, but like I said, one of the quick ways for Uganda is to work on the airstrips. We have quite a number of those that can be worked on properly and be upgraded to handle certain level of traffic, air traffic. So yeah, I'll leave that at that. Anyways, the game between Bournemouth and Brighton is still 1-0 in favor of Bournemouth, so you're not missing out on much. There's not been so many key moments in that second half between those two sides as we look to wrap up match day 22 of the Premier League. That means we still have 16 games to be played. A lot is going on. We spoke about the result from yesterday as Aston Villa got beat by Everton by 1-0, which gave sort of Arsenal a bit of an advantage and a get out of jail card. But they'll have it all to do when we head for match day 23. That will be next weekend because Man City and Aston Villa, who are the closest to the Gunners in terms of the pursuit for the Premier League title, will have already played by the time Arsenal get to play in the Sunday late kickoff at 7:30 p.m. So we'll have to wait and see. And Arsenal will be hosting a very on form, okay, not very on form, but a Man United that is in really, really high spirits following that very convincing victory against Manchester City in the Manchester Derby. But also that new manager bounce, the return of those players from the AFCON. Of course, Nusa Mazoro will be joining them, but Brandon Mbomo and Amadou Diallo, players that Arsenal will have to really, really think hard for, because Amadou Diallo, Brandon Mbomo, and Bruno Fernandes, those are the players to watch. If you're Arsenal, they're the players to put out of the game if you're to have a chance at winning it. Then speaking of Arsenal, Bukayo Saka is back in training, but Ricardo Carafiori was not seen in training as they prepare for their trip to face off with Inter Milan at in the UEFA Champions League for match day 7. That game will be at the San Siro. So yeah, we'll be waiting to see that game, how things pan out. We'll talk about more of it tomorrow. That's when we'll try tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. I'm hoping I'll be here. Ceteris Peribasi to try and so we'll get time to digest all that. But so much action will be coming your way. But here's a snapshot look at the UEFA Champions League fixtures that will be coming your way. In as far as tomorrow and Wednesday is concerned, at 6:30 p.m., Club Brugge will be away to Kairat Almaty, while Bodo Glimt will take on Manchester City at 8:45 p.m. And at 11 p.m., Villarreal will be up against Ajax. Tottenham will be at home against Borussia Dortmund. Olympiacos will take on Bayer Leverkusen, while Sporting CP will be at home against Paris Saint-Germain. That's while Inter Milan will be at home against Arsenal, Real Madrid will be at home against Monaco, while Copenhagen will be at home against Napoli. Then subsequently on Wednesday, Galatasaray at 8:45 p.m. will be up against Atletico de Madrid, while Qarabag will take on Eintracht Frankfurt. And at 11 p.m., you'll have Olympique Marseille entertain Liverpool. Newcastle will take on PSV Eindhoven at St. James's Park. Slavia Praha will entertain Barcelona. Juventus will be up against Benfica. Benfica need to win that game if they are to brighten their chances of making it out to at least the playoff places. Chelsea will be up against Paphos. Bayern Munich will be up against Union St. Cloisy, while Atlanta will take on Athletic Club or Athletic Bilbao. So that is what you should expect to be coming your way on match day 7 of the UEFA Champions League. Like I said, it's a must-win game for Benfica, because if they do win that game, then that means they'll move to about what, to 9 points, and 9 points could easily put them in those playoff places, depending on how results go for the other teams. So, in fact, if they beat Juventus, they will be on level with, they'll be on level points with Juventus, because Juventus have 9 points. So yeah, and then for Arsenal, I think Arsenal need to win. They need to win their next game against Inter Milan, and possibly the one against Kairat Almaty. Or if they draw against Inter Milan and win against Kairat Almaty, then they will guarantee that they finish at the summit of the UEFA Champions League table at the group stage level. That gives you a bit of an advantage going forward in the competition in regards to who plays home first and away, last. So that kind of thing. So they'll be fighting for that. Otherwise, for them, they are rest assured that they do have a place in the round of 16. Their place is guaranteed there. As a direct qualification. So with 18 points unbeaten, only 1 goal conceded in the competition so far, 17 scored. That goals conceded against Bayern Munich. So they've been doing really, really well. Kylian Mbappe is the top scorer with 9 goals in the UEFA Champions League, while Victor Osimhen and Braut Erling Haaland all have 6 goals in as far as the UEFA Champions League is concerned. So we'll get an opportunity to dive into all that, but in as far as the table looks like I said, it's Arsenal with their 18 points, Bayern Munich with 15 points in second place. Paris Saint-Germain come third with 13 points, as do Manchester City and Atlanta. They all have 13 points. Inter Milan occupies 6th with 12 points. Real Madrid have 12 points in 7th place, with Atletico de Madrid in 8th place with 12 points. Liverpool are currently in those playoff places. They come in 9th with 12 points. But then after that, you have Dortmund, Tottenham with 11 points. Newcastle, Chelsea, Sporting CP, Barcelona all have 10 points in 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th places respectively. Then teams with 9 points are from 16th to 20th. That's Olympique Marseille, Juventus, Galatasaray, Monaco, and Bayer Leverkusen. Then you have PSV with 8 points. Quarabag, Napoli, Copenhagen occupying the top 24. Then you do have Benfica, Paphos, Union St. Cloisy, Bilbao, Olympiacos, Frankfurt, Club Brugge, Bodo Glimt, Slavia Praha, Ajax, Villarreal, and Kairat Almaty of completing the bottom 8 in as far as the competition is concerned. I think Kairat Almaty, Villarreal all have 1 point, Ajax 3 points, Slavia Praha 3 points, Bodo Glimt 3 points, Club Brugge, Eintracht Frankfurt all have 4 points and 5 points for Bilbao, as do Olympiacos, 6 points for Union St. Cloisy, as do Paphos, Benfica 6 points. So Benfica just need to win their final 2 games over the group stage, and then they'll guarantee themselves a spot in at least the playoffs. So Juventus is their next assignment, and they'll need to make sure that they win that if they are to have hopes or a chance at least making it to the playoffs. It's still too early for me to decide who will win the competition, but I did mention that some of my favorites this season will include Bayern Munich. I don't think PSG will win it, even though they have a very good team. Why? Because I do not remember the last time a first timer won it and defended the title. But I cannot rule out Real Madrid. They're the most successful team um, in the competition. Then Arsenal out there. So we'll have to wait and see until we get to those, quarterfinal, semi-final stages. We will get, perhaps it will give us an even better impression on what to expect from some of these teams. Inter Milan, they've played 2 finals in the last 3 years, so we cannot really rule them out. Their team is not so much changed, besides the change of guard in terms of the manager, with Christian Chivo in charge, having replaced Simone Inzaghi. And yeah, so that's it really in as far as things go. The reason as to why I do not put Arsenal number one as favorites is because they've never won it, even though they have arguably one of the best squads in European football. Manchester City have a very decent squad. In fact, they've strengthened that squad by signing Marc Guehi from Crystal Palace for about £20 million. They had already added sorry. Manchester City have signed Marquez in addition to Antoine Semenyo. Sorry, I was watching a moment here for the Brighton and Bournemouth game, but it did not result into much. So yeah, Manchester City have given Marquez shirt 15. That's what he will be wearing. Oliver Glasner is not too pleased about that. We know that Juventus continue to pursue the services of Jean-Philippe Mateta, and they want to take him on loan with an obligation to buy next summer. So we so we'll have to wait and see how the transfer window shapes are going into the final days of it. I think we have about 10, 11 days left until the closure of the January transfer window. But yeah, it's been an awfully quiet January transfer window. Uh, there's not there's not much that is happened into it. There's not much that is happened into it, if we are being honest. Some teams have made some moves here and there. Then Inter Milan, who have Manela Kanji on loan, do intend to exercise their option to buy him on a permanent transfer from Manchester City for 15 million euros. So you should expect that to happen. So yeah. Otherwise, allow me wrap it here and wish you a blessed night. Oh, Yankuba Minte with a brilliant attempt, but Jedi Petrovic was right in place to save it, and a game is still 1-0 in favor of AFC Bournemouth. Have a blessed night, and let's link up again tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Bye-bye for now.